Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Francisco Lugo. I'm currently serving as the Director of Fraternity Life here at Georgia Southern. So I have the privilege and honor of representing and guiding the fraternity sorority community on both the Armstrong and Statesboro campus. So for the purposes of this presentation, we will be talking specifically about our Armstrong campus fraternity sorority life to make sure that you have everything you need and answer as many questions as we can tonight of the fraternity sorority community at the Armstrong campus. So a couple of things as we get started. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to use either the chat function or the Q&A function in this webinar so we can answer questions as we go. So basically, feel free to put in anything you need to. Feel free as I go through the presentation. That's not a problem. You don't need to wait till the end of the presentation to ask your questions. So with that said, I will go ahead and kick us off. So we start off with our philosophy as an office. So we believe that if the fraternity sorority experience is done right, it is a premier leadership experience on a college campus today because of what they teach, the expectations they create, and the opportunities they provide. And we truly believe this. Again, everybody in the office is affiliated and is part of a national organization. And we believe in this thing called fraternity and sorority. But this also helps guide the way that we approach our work on a day-to-day basis. So this is something that, again, we take into account as we look at things that we do or put in place that affects our chapters, our community. So this is really our guiding philosophy as how we approach our work on a day-to-day basis. So quick things overview from an office perspective. So again, this is our mission, basically, which is to enhance student development by creating safe environments that foster and support leadership development, civic engagement, a sense of belonging, inclusive excellence, and academic success within our community. So a lot of this kind of trickles down into our core values. So basically, if you think about everything that fraternities represent and you take away all the marketing things that we put out there from a national perspective and things like that, these are the things that we believe are at the core of what fraternities and sororities are all about at Georgia Southern. So basically, we start off with our core values. So academic success, again, we definitely pride ourselves in that piece. And not only do we as an institution, but also our national organizations and chapters also pride and look making sure we are academically successful at our college and university, just because, again, you are coming to the university to get an education, and we are part of that process. Community engagement, again, as something that we do on a day-to-day basis, our chapters engage not only with our local communities, but also with national philanthropists that they help raise funds for on different fronts. That's something that we engage with in every day. Health and safety is really one of the things that we are definitely in tune and focused on to make sure that we're providing a safe and healthy environment for all our members in this community. And that's something that we do through trainings, with holding each other accountable, and making sure that we're following expectations not only set by the university, but also expectations set by national organizations. Inclusive excellence, so you will hear a lot about this when you come to Southern. This is one of our main things that we are prideful of and pillars of. So basically, again, we are providing an inclusive environment for all members of the community, and we are definitely making sure that this also trickles down to the fraternity sorority community. And again, we do this to make sure that we are have a good, well-rounded experience for our chapter members who are going through this process and this experience. And then lastly, but not least, leadership development and belonging. So a lot of our students are really going to be engaged in this experience, are going to definitely get some leadership skills and leadership development through their course of their time, not only at the chapter, but also if they choose to engage with other opportunities on campus, that is really going to help fine tune those leadership development pieces. And lastly is that sense of belonging. We know that our students who are engaged in this fraternity sorority experience have more of an affinity to the university, to their chapter, to the national organization, because they find a place where they belong and they are accepted for who they are, and they thrive in that environment. So moving forward, we talk also about the core function of our office. So again, main thing that we do is the advocacy piece to make sure that people understand the value of fraternity and sorority on the campus, and make sure that this experience is still relevant. We know there's a lot of noise out there of why fraternities and sororities may not be relevant anymore, but we truly believe that this experience is still relevant in the day-to-day, and is definitely something that we encourage our students to explore and see if this is something that they are wanting and interested in joining. We also do that part of the programming and training pieces that we do. So not only are we training our students who are within the community, but we also help provide information to our faculty or staff to make sure they understand what this experience is about and what are the things that we're looking for when it comes to making sure that this experience is still worth the investment and the time and resources into engaging with. And then the recruitment, retention, graduation rate, that's basically something that if you think about it and you ask yourself, well, how does fraternity and sorority life fit into the overall mission of the university? And we do that by, again, recruiting our students to be engaged in this experience. Again, this is us participating during summer orientations, during these type of presentations. So that's how we do that recruitment piece. But then more importantly, we help students stay retained and also graduate from the university. So when it looks like we pull information from our institutional research office that we know that incoming freshmen who are part of our fraternity sorority experience are retained at 90% versus a 70% for those incoming freshmen who are not involved in the fraternity sorority community. And that's huge. So again, that mainly says that, again, if you're engaging in experience, you're more likely going to come back because again, you have created that affinity with that chapter and that sense of belonging. And two, when it comes to the graduation piece, we also know that our students are graduating at a higher rate based on those that are not, when compared to those that are not part of the fraternity sorority experience. So that's at a 50 versus 30 at a 4-year. So again, we're very prideful of that. So we definitely want to continue that piece. And lastly, that values alignment piece. Again, like I said earlier, these organizations have expectations. They are values-based organizations, and we need to make sure that the individuals within these chapters are meeting not only the expectations from Georgia Southern that we have for our community, but also that these students are meeting the expectations that their national organizations are also expecting them to meet. So that's how we function, or the core functions of our office. So community overview, currently at the Armstrong campus, we have 7 chapters. So we have Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Sigma Tau, Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated, Phi Mu, Sigma Gamma Rho, Sorority Incorporated, Sigma Sigma or Tri Sigma, and then Zeta Phi Beta, Sorority Incorporated. So roughly within Georgia Southern, we have 12% of our community belonging to the fraternity sorority community. And when it comes to GPA and how we compare with our peers, again, as of the spring, the overall GPA for the FSL community on both campuses was 3.09. And as you can see there, the non-FSL members are from female and male are there also listed. The other thing to kind of keep in mind is that we as a university do not own any housing or any facility, even though you might see some houses specifically in the Statesboro campus. Those houses are not university owned, are not university property or anything like that. So I just wanted to kind of also put that out there, and this also applies to the Armstrong campus. So jumping into really the eligibility piece. So if you are an incoming freshman, we then look at a 275 out of high school based on your high school core curriculum. And this is something that's calculated through the Office of Admissions. So basically, this is the main entry piece that we look at. So any student who meets this requirement is allowed to join any of our groups on campus. If you are a student who is transferring in or has at least 12 credit hours from Georgia Southern through dual enrolled or anything like that, we then look at a 2.5 or higher GPA. So basically, that's going to be the main things that we look at when looking at whether or not you can start this process and join one of our organizations. With that said, just keep in mind that some of these organizations have higher GPA standards. So again, think about that 2.75 and that 2.5 as the bare minimum to kind of go into this experience. But we know that chapters have higher expectations than that. So keep that in mind as you navigate this experience in this process. If you have any questions, concerns, and this is very important, we do not make any exceptions to that 7.5 and 2.5 rule. And we do that purposefully just because we know and we want to make sure that we are setting our students up for success. So with that said, if you have any questions, concerns about your GPA, especially if you're an incoming freshman, we do have an admissions liaison that can really do a deep dive and take a look at your high school grades and figure out what that looks like and kind of adjust it from what they can see on the back end. Because again, this is based on your high school core curriculum. So again, that person's name is Zachary Hagan, and you'll see his email listed as well here. So that is the person you need to contact. And then he will have that conversation with you and then hopefully get the best GPA possible to allow you to go through this experience. And lastly, but not least, the other piece that we have as a policy is that you can only join chapters on your primary campus. So basically, we as a university made that decision when we consolidated with Armstrong State University because we felt that that was in the best interest of our students from a risk management perspective. So basically, you can only join the chapters based on the Armstrong campus. You cannot join, if your primary campus is Armstrong, you cannot join a chapter in Statesboro. After you become a member, that's a different conversation, just because we know that based on your major, your primary campus might shift to one or the other campus and could fluctuate in that. So we just want to make sure that, again, that as from a recruitment perspective, that's the only limitation that also is in place. And this is something that we address. We'll have a lot of questions, especially from parents and some students, about how do you address behavior within the fraternity sorority community. So as you can see there, we look at it from an approach of this is something that we are all part of, finding solutions and addressing behavior. So again, not only is the university part of that process and conversation, but we also believe that parents, alumni, and then also our international national offices are part of the equation to solve our issues that we may have within the community as a whole. So on top of that, again, we do have policies that kind of also govern how these organizations work and do things on campus in order to continue to be recognized at Georgia Southern. So again, we do have an academic policy, which basically has expectations set on each chapter of what GPA, specific GPA they must have in order to continue in good standing with the university. We have an administrative policy that kind of covers more those administrative pieces of paperwork that needs to be turned in, when, how often, and things like that. We also do have a social policy, which means any chapter who is interested in doing an event with alcohol must submit that paperwork in before they have the event. The other thing to keep in mind too is that these organizations are part of a bigger group, which we call governing councils, which we will talk to in a minute. And these organizations also have judicial boards that basically are designed to hold chapters accountable for violations of the bylaws or anything else along those lines. On our website, you can look at two things that we have there to kind of also address and be transparent about what has happened within our community. So the first page that we encourage you to look at is the chapter statuses page. So in that page, you will see a historical breakdown of chapters that have been held responsible for any violation of our Code of Student Conduct starting in 2015. So you'll see that there. And then more recently, we are now, by state law, must provide or must publicly advertise, if that makes sense, any organization, whether it's a fraternity or not, that has been held responsible for hazing. So you can click on that and you'll also see those chapters that have been held accountable or held responsible for hazing, and you'll see a more in-depth description of the event, what happened, how the process got adjudicated, and the sanctions that came after that. And again, this is a state law that all universities within the state of Georgia have to do moving forward. As I mentioned earlier, again, these organizations also have a national or international policies that they also have to follow. And ultimately, all our students on all our campuses must follow the Code of Student Conduct. That also dictates the behavior that is expected of our students. So that's how we address our behavior on our campus. So before we get started into the nitty-gritty, more information about the chapters and the councils, we want to start off with what are councils. So basically, councils are a group or student organization that oversees and coordinates the activities of these chapters. So the councils provide resources, guidance for these organizations. We as an office actively advise I would say 5 organizations, and 2 of those are in our Armstrong campus. The other thing that we kind of want to talk through as we dive more into this fraternity sorority experience is the difference between intake versus recruitment. So this is really just talking about how our group, some of our groups, use these things called intake and recruitment to seek membership into their organization. So intake is more of an informal process that our MPHC or culturally based groups do. That basically is a more or less formal process that they'll have informational meetings, and they will then eventually have other events that are open to the community to get individuals who are interested in these organizations, get to know the members, get to know the organization, and eventually it leads to a membership application process that they would start. And then eventually it concludes with a coming out show or probate show to kind of reveal to the community. So that's one way of our MPHC or culturally based group. Recruitment, on the other hand, it's more of a week-long process that begins with an orientation. It's a little bit more formally structured, and basically the women go through this process, and they get to meet all the organizations within that council, and then eventually they get a bid, which is basically an extension of membership for those women, and then eventually they will start their new member process after that. So hopefully that'll give you a sense of idea of how fraternity and sororities are structured within the campus, and then we'll dive into our councils. So first we have the National Panhellenic Council. So basically right now we have 4 of those 9 organizations, and you can see them there again. So basically, again, they do what we call intake. So basically they will host educational forums, they'll have events on campus, and those are things that are open to the community. Eventually, like I said, they will host an informational or rush meeting or interest meeting that individuals who are interested in seeking membership to these organizations will attend, and they'll explain the process, they'll explain how things work, and then eventually that's when the new member process would begin. There is not a set deadline or set date for these organizations to start their new member process, so keep that in mind. So we definitely encourage you to reach out to them, to follow them on social media, and kind of follow what they're doing, because basically they will eventually say, hey, we're having informational on X, Y, and day. So basically keep that in mind, that that's there as an option for you all to take part of. Then we have the College Panhellenic, and we have 3 organizations within this council, which are Alpha Sigma Tau, Phi Mu, and Tri Sigma. So they do what we call a formal process. So you would have to sign up for this process. So basically they will start their recruitment in September. So basically they will kick off their week with a PNM orientation on that Wednesday, September 13th, which will be followed by 3 different rounds, where the women will go meet all 3 chapters throughout the week, or the week and the weekend. And basically on Saturday, the women, we will pre-accept a bid for 1 or 2 chapters. And then on Sunday, that's when it's what we call bid day, and that's when the women will see which bid they got off from, what chapter they got a bid from. So that's pretty much how that process works. The last day to register for Panhellenic or recruitment at the Armstrong campus is Wednesday, September 13th. So just make sure that you do that by then. They will be hosting other events throughout at the start of the semester that we definitely encourage you to attend and get to know these women as well in these chapters. Again, as far as registration for that, it's $50, and that just covers the expenses for that week that the council will have for putting on the event and providing snacks and food for the women going through the process as well. And then again, if there's any questions, concerns about your GPA, we definitely encourage you to reach out to Zachary, and he will be able to answer any questions you might have about the process when it comes to GPAs. And like I said, try to give you the best GPA to make you eligible to go through the experience. So with that said, that's really the nitty-gritty of it. Again, that's our contact information. So again, if there's any questions, concerns, feel free to reach out. Our office we have offices on both campuses, so we definitely encourage you to reach out to us. Our office on the Armstrong campus is located in the Student Union on the second floor in the Student Activities suite, Student Enrollment Suite. So feel free to stop by. Our Assistant Director, Candice, is there, and she can answer any questions you might have. But again, that's pretty much it that I have for you all today. So I will stop sharing my screen and look at the Q&A and see if there's any questions, concerns that people might have as we wrap this up. So any questions or concerns from anybody? As we wait till these come up, a couple of things that we typically get asked is, yes, I can. So typically that we get asked is, what is the time commitment that students that go through this process are going through or going to have? So what we typically tell our students is that think about it, that you're almost taking another class, a 3-credit-hour class. So think about it from that perspective. That's what you would be doing for that membership piece as you go into this process. The other question that we typically get asked is, when is the right time to join our organizations? And really that answer is really up to you to kind of navigate that and figure that out. I know that there's a myth out there that you have to do it as an incoming freshman, and that is just a myth. It is not a thing. Again, you can wait until your second semester freshman year. You can wait until your sophomore year. You can wait to junior year. Again, I joined as a senior and still had a good time with my fraternity. So it goes back to, it's really whenever you're ready. The only thing that I would mention on that point is that our college, Panhellenic, they only do formal recruitment in the fall. So if you do that formal recruitment piece, the only other option would be spring recruitment, and spring recruitment depends on how they do as a chapter, which will determine which chapter will be able to take in new members. So if you do not go through that formal recruitment this fall, you would then have to, and not get a bid on in the spring, you would have to wait till that sophomore year to go again through formal recruitment, if that makes sense. So just keep that in mind. Great question about NPHC convocation. So because NPHC is not established yet on the Armstrong campus as a council, we do not host any specific NPHC type convocation events. However, with that said, we'll be hosting as an office different meetings and informationals that will kind of replicate the NPHC convocation that is held on the Statesboro campus. So just keep on the lookout on our social media for those. So just know that, again, that is something that we have committed to do, is to establish a different NPHC council on the Armstrong campus to make sure they're functioning and doing their thing as a collective as they should be. So just keep that in mind as you go through this process. So the question I'm reading is, to register for orientation, just to clarify, is that Panhellenic orientation or is that orientation for the university? Two different things. Just want to make sure I get the gist of the question. But again, the only time that you would reach out to Zachary would be if you or have our incoming freshman and have any specific questions about your GPA that you want him to take a look on the back end and see how we can give you the best possible GPA to go through this process, if that makes sense. Yeah, so to do PNM orientation, if you and I can put the link, let me stop sharing this real quick. I will put the link on here for that. So I will put the registration to the link to register for the Panhellenic recruitment that happens in September. And then I will also add a YouTube link. Actually, let's do that first since I have that up already. If you'll take a look at, where's my chat? What's my chat? So if you take a look at that YouTube video, it will show you how to register through the My Georgia Southern portal. That will give you direct access to the registration link to register for the College Panhellenic recruitment that happens in September. Great question about volunteer hours. So yes, so if you are, volunteer, we definitely encourage our students to volunteer as much as possible, whether you're joining a fraternity or not, or a sorority or not. So with that said, yes, our MPHC organizations are really going to be looking for a couple of things. So one, they typically don't take incoming freshmen. So typically they're going to be looking at somebody who has a established GPA or have at least 12 credit hours. They're going to be looking at somebody who is engaged and involved on campus. And what we mean by that is that they're also involved in other student organizations, that being them more appealing to these chapters, and they can see that they're engaging with the community as a whole. And then they're also going to be looking at somebody who is definitely engaged with community service. So one of the things that I suggest our students to do is to reach out to the Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement, because they do an amazing job at providing opportunities for our students to take advantage of service opportunities within the Savannah community. So they have a program called Serve 912. So they'll offer free rides to service opportunities. So they will provide a transportation to and from. So you just have to sign up and show up, and they'll take care of everything on their end. So there's nothing that you need to do on that front. So just keep that in mind, that's a great way to get some of those service hours. The other cool thing about that process is that you can track your service hours through what we call, it's the platform called Ego Engage. So you can track your hours through that, and basically what you can do later, if and when you're ready to join one of these groups, is that you can print out those service hours and attach it to your membership application, which then can show that organization that you've been involved in service from the get-go, for if you're an incoming freshman, or that you're engaged and continue to be engaged within the community. So that's a great way to keep track of those hours. They eventually will be used as you apply for membership for these organizations. I also dropped in the chat the actual registration link for the College Panhellenic fall recruitment. So put that there. And the other thing that I would say is that this is being recorded. So once we end the webinar later today, we will wait for it to process, and then we will be uploading it to our YouTube channel. So if for whatever reason you missed anything, or have any questions, concerns, you'll be able to see that. We also have that other YouTube video already that kind of explains how to register through My Jerusalem portal. So we will continue to populate a lot of videos and different things throughout the rest of the summer and even into the fall semester to make sure that you have all the information you need to answer anything that you have questions about. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel and make sure that you keep following us on social media as well, because that's where we post a lot of our information as well when it comes to these events that are not only we as an office do, but also we share what our chapters are doing also on campus. So just that way is a great way to get into the know. Any other questions or concerns? These are great questions, by the way. So again, if there's no other questions, then we definitely appreciate you all coming out and listening to us for about an hour, 30 minutes. Again, like I said, this is going to be recorded and going to be posted on our YouTube channel. So feel free to take a look once we post this video. Again, just want to make sure that you understand that we do have a good community on the Armstrong campus when it comes to fraternities and sororities. So we definitely encourage you to look at them. You will see a lot more programmatic pieces on this front as well. So the first Wednesday, we will be hosting an event called What's Up Wednesday, and you will see all these organizations be tabling out there in addition to some of our campus partners. So feel free to stop by and engage and get to know our organizations. And we look forward to seeing you on campus in August. Have a good one, you all.